Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to show you how I go about planting hydrangeas. There are a lot of different hydrangea species that we actually use in ornamental horticulture. And so the one we're planting today is Miss Saori, which is a Hydrangea macrophylla. This is a big leaf hydrangeas, French hydrangeas. This one goes by a lot of names. They tend to have fairly good sized leaves on them. This one's just leafing out now, and it's been cool this spring, so it's probably a hair behind where it normally is. It has beautiful, the macrophyllas tend to, have these balls of inflorescences that are blue or pink traditionally, but we see whites, and then we see flat inflorescences as well. We see round balls. This one has really white, but with kind of a reddish edge on each of the little flowers around the whole ball, and it's one of our absolute favorite hydrangeas. Every single time we see this one, has incredible burgundy foliage throughout the season as well. You can see that as it's leafing out now. So beautiful foliage, beautiful flowers, great plant. Again, it matters what hydrangeas you're putting in as to where you're going to put them in your garden. Most of the Hydrangea macrophyllas are hardy in zone 5 to 9. Up in zone 5, you probably want to buy one that's remontant or repeat blooming, and there's lots of new Hydrangea macrophyllas like this on the market that if the flower buds get damaged during the winter, because these actually carry their flower buds through the winter, if they get damaged, it'll still bloom for you. So make sure you're buying one that will bloom on old and new wood if you're up in zone 5. For everybody else, these will typically go in some sort of part shade condition. Shadier the further south you go, sunnier the further north you go. So if you're in zone 5 or 6, they'll take more sun than they will here where I'm at in Raleigh, North Carolina, in zone 7B. We'll put it where it'll get some direct sun on it, but it'll be in the afternoon shade by around 2:30, 3 o'clock or something. The trees over here behind it will start to cast a shadow across it. If you have more sunny spaces, you can use Hydrangea paniculatas. And limelight is a great example of that. I actually have a paniculata tree form that I've been working on right back here behind me. There's several videos about how I'm turning that Hydrangea paniculata into a tree. Those are much more sun tolerant. And again, limelight, white wedding is one we have here in our garden as well. We have 2 native hydrangeas, okay, and both of those are really part shade. One will tolerate a little more shade. One is Hydrangea quercifolia, which is oak leaf hydrangeas. Those will definitely take part shade or shade conditions. Again, they're native to the southeastern United States. And then Hydrangea arborescens are native kind of throughout the eastern United States, almost all the way down to the Gulf. And they're absolutely fantastic. Smooth hydrangeas is what they're called. Interestingly, I put up a video not that long ago on pruning hydrangeas. Keep in mind, each of these different species of hydrangeas I'm talking about may require different pruning. This particular one, we prune after it flowers because it's carrying its flower buds through the winter time. Same thing with oak leaf hydrangeas. Smooth hydrangeas are Hydrangea arborescens, which are one of the best for pollinators if you want to invite pollinators into your garden, actually get cut down to the ground in the winter. And the Hydrangea paniculatas can be pruned in the winter as well. So different pruning on all 4 of those different types. So keep that in mind. Maybe a different placement in the garden. I've got videos on the channel for these different types of hydrangeas. But in this video, I wanted to show you planting, which is going to be similar for all of them. We're right here at the beginning of May, and it's got all kinds of things going on in the garden. It's been cool this spring. We're probably a hair behind where we'd like to be, but that's okay. We've gotten lots of rainfall and it's cool outside. It's still nice. Sometimes the heat can already be quite bad here in Raleigh where we're at. So thankful for some 65-degree days and some long sleeve shirts right now. We're in the process of mulching. Got potato bags back here that look great. Summer vegetable gardens in, but the cool season vegetables are still doing pretty well. So lots going on here in the garden. And right before we mulch, we're putting lots of plants in the ground because we like to get as much done in the garden as we can before we mulch, because I don't want to be walking around in the mulch afterwards, maybe bringing up weed seeds and that kind of thing. Most of these, it's pretty straightforward, planting any of these hydrangeas. One other hydrangea that I didn't mention in that first part, a couple others actually. There's Hydrangea serrata as well, is a very common one. Those are mountain hydrangeas. Very similar foliage and flower to macrophylla, so no difference in where I would put them in the garden in that part shade conditions. And then they're climbing hydrangeas as well. Tons of other species also, but those are the kind of the 6 main species that we use in ornamental horticulture typically. I'm digging a hole. We have composted this garden 3 years ago, and then we've mulched several times since, and that mulch has been breaking down. There were actually wood chips put out here initially as well, and all that stuff's broken down. So when I plant something out here, I really don't have to add anything to the soil. See how black this soil is on the top? It's just really amazing how much we've changed it. Now, once we get past a certain depth here, I'll show you. I've got something we can make bricks out of down below, right there. Okay. I don't mind clay soils. They can be hard to dig in, but they don't bother me at all. They're nutrient dense. The main thing is when you know you have clay-based soils, you want to mound your plants up a bit so they're not sitting way down in it. But this compost just gets mixed in. All this humus layer that we've created in the last 3 years gets mixed in. I use this trenching shovel, this narrow trenching shovel, because it cuts right through this clay, makes easy work of it. And I'll get down to about the depth of that container, but I'll end up putting some soil back in it ultimately to mound it up just a bit. There you go. There's one hole dug in the clay. This has been in this container for a while, and I can tell because there's moss growing on the drain holes in it. So I think where we got this one from, it had been with them for a little while. But it's not terribly root bound. It's actually not terribly root bound. I'm going to break this up just a bit. You can definitely get plants that are way more root bound than this, but I'll just tickle these a bit. If they're really, really root bound, I mean just a mat of roots, I'll cut from the top to bottom in several places around it, and just to make sure the roots are just kind of going outward and not continuing to wrap in a circle. If they're really, really matted on the bottom, sometimes I'll just saw that bottom ½ inch off. I've shown it in some other videos, but this one I think this was in a 1 gallon container that was very root bound and got put in this 3 gallon container recently because it's not root bound at all. I'll initially set this in there and I'll put my shovel. I always put my shovel next to the hole, just like that. When I'm planting something, I don't care what it is, I'm going to put my shovel next to the hole across it like this, and I'll want, if I get the top of this root ball up to the top of this shovel, I know it'll be at least this high above the original grade, if that makes any sense. It's going to be, about this much above the original grade, which is about where I want it. And right now it's sitting down below the top of my shovel, so I can pull the hydrangea out, put some soil back in. Keep in mind, when you put loose soil back in the bottom of a hole like this, it's going to settle some and and the plant's going to sink a bit. So pack it down just a hair. Don't go crazy packing soil in, but pack it down just a bit so that it doesn't sink too much. We'll put it back in, test it one more time, make sure. Now it's sitting right at the top of that shovel, and the height of that shovel sitting above the original grade. We know it's above it. That's how I've always done that. It works great. It's a great measuring tool. I'll just kind of break these clay clods up as I work them back into the in and around this thing. I'm not going to drop a bunch of chunks of wood in here though. Okay. I'll just feather this clay and compost mix back around it. Now, when I compact this soil back down, I do it very gently. I want to get the biggest air pockets taken out of it, but I do not want to over compact it. These roots need to breathe. Needs to be air remaining in the soil afterwards. And this clay soil like this, you can definitely overdo it. Over compact things. Okay. So I'm leaving. Okay. I've left that little bit of edge of the top of that root ball up above the grade. I'm going to pack it down just a bit, just to make sure, again, I've gotten all the big air pockets out, but I don't want to do any more than that. And then I've got some triple shredded hardwood mulch. You could use pine straw, whatever you want to use. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to kick this around here, put a couple inches all the way around it, And I should have said water the plant first. Make sure the plant's not going in the ground in drought stress. It's one of the things I probably should have said right at the beginning. Make sure you're watering the plant before you get started. If it was dry going into it, water it, walk away from it for a couple hours, let it kind of recover from whatever drought stress it was under, and then plant it. I don't want to put the thing in the ground already stressed. So that's it. It's 2 inches of mulch. I'm not covering anything that wasn't covered in the container. That's important. Don't put the mulch up on its neck like this and and choke it. That's it. I'm going to water this in to settle that soil around it, and that's pretty much it. We'll keep the weeds away from it. We've got it well mulched. We fertilized everything out here a month or two ago. I fertilized all the soil out here. It's not going to need anything else this season. These macrophyllus can be pruned pretty much only after they flower if they need it. Typically, they're not going to need it a whole lot. This one can be kept probably 3 by 3 or up to 5 by 5 if we wanted to let it get that big over some period of years. This stuff right here is temporary behind it that for our tomatoes for this season, but it'll get moved back and to give this thing a little more room over the years. The planting of this Hydrangea macrophylla or any of the other hydrangea types is exactly the same. Again, it's about picking the space in which you're putting it. So some of them can take a little more sun than others. As you go north, most of them can take more sun than they can in the south. Again, the mulch is here to hold some moisture in place, hopefully prevent some weeds from germinating around it during the summer. You can't prevent all weeds, but it'll help prevent some of that. It also shades the roots from the direct sun. There will be a little bit of direct sun on this. Hydrangea macrophyllas are great at letting you know they're dry, or letting you know that they are just in too hot of a spot. If this one is wilting every afternoon, but I come over here and I put my finger down in the ground a little bit and I check and it's actually still moist, what's happening there is it actually can't bring water up into the top of the plant as fast as the sun is taking it out, because this thing has leaves that are this big. Okay, that can happen with very large leafed plants, that the sun just takes the water out faster than it could possibly bring it up, even though it's got water. Typically, as the sun goes down in the evening, you'll see your hydrangea come right back up if it has enough water. But do check it. But frequently, if they're wilting in the afternoon, I'll just, I'll come check, see if it needs water. Most likely it doesn't, and it's just losing water faster than it can bring it up. It recovers in the evening, and I go on with life. In northern areas, you're probably going to want to spring plant or early summer plant most hydrangeas. Here in the south, we're probably best to plant most of them in the fall, because they can get that winter under them, get one winter under them. Our soil doesn't freeze, so they can root out a bit during the winter time, and they can come, if this had been in the ground during the winter time, it would have probably already come out quite a bit more vigorous than it has in that container. But it's okay to spring plant them, not really an issue. Hydrangeas are probably I plant 12 months out of the year, but I probably wouldn't put a hydrangea in the ground. It's an absolute full bloom. When I summer plant things that are flowering, typically I'll cut the flowers off. I don't think anybody wants to do that on their hydrangea. So if you buy one that's already absolutely in full bloom, you might want to enjoy it for a little while in the container and then put it in the ground, because it will be very difficult for that plant to take the transplant shock and be full flower during the summertime. So there you go. That's how I go about planting hydrangeas. Again, pick the hydrangea that's right for the spot. There's definitely one for you, and pretty much from zone 3 down to zone 10, there's a hydrangea for you and in the space that you need it to go in. And then plant them high, water them in, and enjoy them. And again, I got some other videos on the channel for showing you how to prune them and fertilize them, all those kinds of things. Thanks for watching.